What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to the Locks DFS NFL Cash Game Breakdown video. I am your host, Christian Hardy. I am at ByHardy on Twitter. We are going to be going through this Week 10 NFL slate full of lots of very, very good plays. I think it's going to be somewhat of a chalky week, but I'm excited to get into it. Before we do that, I wanted to remind you guys to follow me on Twitter. I'm at ByHardy on Twitter. You can follow me there, and also to follow us at Locks DFS. That is my website, along with Addy Narangs. You guys see him with his Addy's action tomorrow. He will be up here on the channel. We're going to be going through my team from last week here shortly, but before we do that, I wanted to remind you guys to check out our website, locksdfs.com. Check out our season passes that we have. Check out our monthly pass as well. That gives you access to NBA, NFL, and my college football breakdowns and lock sheets every week. That also goes through all of the showdowns for NFL, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. We have lock sheets for those. Obviously, we do the Thursday breakdowns here. But before we get into it, be sure to hit the like button. That helps out a lot. Subscribe, and if you are subscribed and comment, you will have a chance to win. Comment with your favorite cash play of the week. This is the cash game breakdown. Comment with your favorite cash play of the week. Yeah, tell me why you like them, and you'll have a chance to win that free season pass from locksdfs.com. Just leave that comment, and we will choose a winner on the Thursday night showdown video. So, all right, guys, now that we have gone through a few of the preliminary things, let's go ahead and look at my last week team, which, again, did not make it into cash. That is 2 weeks in a row, unfortunately, for us. Made a few bad decisions, didn't jam in Russell Wilson, didn't end up on Christian Kirk for the afternoon slate. Ended up about 13 points out of cash. So basically, you know, I had Keenan Allen, Jarvis Landry with 200 left, and I was gonna have to make these wide receiver decisions. Not Keenan. Sorry, Godwin and Mike Williams, or Godwin and Landry going into the afternoon slate, and I knew that I had 200 left over to make pretty much the decisions I wanted to make there, and I made the wrong one. I think if I play Lockett there. I think if I play Lockett and Landry, who ended up with a pretty solid game, I know he finished at least with what Williams did, I'm pretty sure. I think I get into cash. I'm at least closer to cash and probably win a little bit more rebate in my head-to-heads. But, yeah, I mean, the construction was pretty straightforward for me. Once I decided, I landed on Phillip Rivers just because it let me get Christian McCaffrey, which I knew I wanted to pay up at one running back spot. I talked about Dalvin Cook in the video, and he was my cover boy. But as Sunday morning rolled around, I just felt like Christian McCaffrey is just too solid of a play to not play. I was talking to Addy about Dalvin Cook and how, like a lot of teams that go to Arrowhead struggle. McCaffrey has 100% share of his team, whereas we see Cook come off the field sometimes. That played into it a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's only $500 more to get McCaffrey. So it made a lot of sense. You'll see Addy tomorrow. He didn't make the right decision there, but yeah, I mean, obviously not having Wilson was the issue here, and Rivers actually had a pretty solid game. The issue was that they got in the red zone a decent amount, and they just decided to run the ball there in the red zone, so no touchdowns there. He didn't end up getting the 300-yard bonus either. So both those definitely hurt me with Rivers. I made the wrong. I didn't make defensive priority, and a lot of the defenses that people were also got onto. Obviously, Redskins are pretty chalky here, and I don't hate the play still at the price. To be honest with you, and they could have easily gotten 6 points or something like that. But regardless, yeah, that pretty much sums up the week there. Just a few little mistakes in the wide receivers, and then not prioritizing Wilson, which I think would have been tough with McCaffrey. But if I go down another receiver spot, I can get there, either from Allen or from Godwin. Okay, so moving on to Week 10 of the NFL season, we are going through the main slate. We're gonna go over my favorite plays at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and talk a little bit about each of them. So there are some very clear plays. Honestly, if I'm just gonna tell you guys right off the bat, this is how I would prefer to start my build this week. These three guys right here. I would love to just play these three guys, start from there, and then go from there. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson. Honestly, I'm just going to leave these guys in here for now. This is how I want to start my team. Lamar Jackson, just clearly the top projecting quarterback this week against Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati is just not a good offense. Bengals are 31st in overall DVOA in defense, 30th versus the pass, 29th versus the run, and obviously when you play Lamar Jackson, you are getting a quarterback and a running back, so the rush DVOA versus the rush DVOA matters. Obviously, over the last 3 weeks, the dude has gone nuts rushing wise. 152 yards and a touchdown, 116 yards and a touchdown, 61 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're getting a running back and you're getting a quarterback here. He's only broken to that 300-yard bonus once this year. So he's usually not going to get you to the double bonus for the most part. But if there was a matchup where he can double bonus, it's right here against Cincinnati. On a week where there aren't a ton of great options below him, we'll talk about Winston in a second, but and I'm not too interested in the cheap options when they're only 1,500 away from getting to Jackson. I know that's a lot, but it's just something that you should just probably prioritize getting Jackson to your lineups. And obviously, I don't want to just look at box scores, but going back 3 weeks ago, he put up 33.64 points against the Cincinnati Bengals in a game. A lot of people thought he might not run as much in that game, and then obviously he came through with that. Game was kind of tight, but yeah, I love Lamar Jackson, love his touchdown equity, love everything about him. Obviously, the guys in this high total game between the Bucks and the Cardinals is both those guys are definitely interesting. We've seen the total drop a little bit, but it's still the highest total game in the slate besides this blowout between the Saints and the Falcons, the expected blowout between the Saints and the Falcons. So I'm interested in both those quarterbacks in that massive total. Winston, of course, has a little bit of a rushing floor. That's great. Not much of one, but a little bit of one. I feel like I say that every time I talk about Winston. I do prefer Winston over Kyler Murray for only 300 more, just because he has a little bit of a better matchup. The Bucks have been a pass funnel all year and everything, but they are slightly better. And where am I on my notes? Let's see. Obviously, he's at home. He's a 4.5 favorite, and He gets to play a man defense in Arizona here. They have Patrick Peterson. He's been struggling since he came back. So love Winston here. Obviously, I would prefer to get to the quarterback who, if you are playing one of these guys, to get to the quarterback who has a higher team total here. I think Kyler Murray, of course, we haven't seen a lot of rushing upside from him. I'm not sure if that's planned from Kingsbury or not. I mean, I would expect Murray to do more rushing than he's been doing. But he's going to do a little bit here and there, and get out of the pocket and do some running. I just am surprised we haven't seen more design runs from these guys, but it's just not really what Kingsbury's been doing. So it kind of limits his upside. Obviously, we're looking at a very, very nice matchup against a pass funnel of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But like I said, I really just want to pay for Lamar Jackson and cash. These other guys that I'm even talking about right now are really just GPP considerations for me. McCaffrey, who's already plugged into this 3-man core I have here, he's just pretty much just the nuts every single week. He is a road dog here this week, and it's a little bit different of a little bit of a different situation than last week. But we've seen Green Bay just get teared up by running backs this year. Melvin Gordon rushed all over the Packers last week. I mean, that was the reason why Rivers didn't come through, is because they had so much success just running the ball, pounding it, especially when they got into the red zone. They're like, oh, okay, let's just get 5 yards here and get into the end zone. And it was Melvin Gordon every time. Eckler also got some red zone chances as well, plenty of red zone chances. Packers giving up 4.9 yards per rush, which is just really, really insane. Even if this game goes in favor of the Packers are giving up the 6th most receptions to opposing running backs so far this year. We've seen McCaffrey's receiving floor dip down a little bit, but I mean, I think that especially if they get down in this game as Vegas is expecting them to do, we'll see McCaffrey, that role increase again. I mean, although he hasn't done it this year, McCaffrey is absolutely a threat for double bonus, a double 100-yard bonus, or even just, if he can't do it in the rushing game somehow, he can do it in the receiving game absolutely. I think he'll be around 7 to 9 targets in this game. Just play him. Just play him. I don't mind Saquon Barkley, but I'm not going to be fading McCaffrey for him, I don't think. So, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tougher on FanDuel. I've built a little bit on FanDuel, and it is a little bit tougher. He is the same price, 10.5K on FanDuel, but I would definitely be trying to find a way to get him and going down a receiver or something like that. Barkley's interesting just because the Jets are missing, their entire defense. 3 inside linebackers, believe 3 starting defensive linemen. They're missing a little bit in the secondary as well. This game could end up playing as a little bit of a pace up. As both these teams have started to move a little bit faster as the year has moved on, and Barkley is a 3-point favorite in what is essentially a home game. He could definitely break out in this game. I mean, we've seen Barkley get stuffed by three defenses in the last. I was gonna say 3 tough defenses, but I guess it's just Dallas in terms of tough defenses. Detroit's not bad either, but he just hasn't really caught that ceiling game yet. This was a solid game against Detroit, of course, but. Yeah, I mean, he could definitely come through in this game in a game that I think definitely could end up with a lot of fantasy points in it potentially. But he's not really someone I'm considering for cash games because it's really tough to get to him with McCaffrey. Okay. Marlon Mack is someone that I could possibly see myself getting to in cash games, but again, with those three core pieces, it's going to be tough to get to a guy like Mack. But man, I mean, this is a really good spot for Mack, especially with Brissett being a game time decision. I think the Colts are going to lean on the run a lot. Already, this is a game script to lean on the run spot against the Dolphins at home. 12.5 point favorites right now. He is giving up a decent amount of snaps to Hines and Wilkins, Nyheim Hines, yeah, that's right. I think that's right. And Jordan Wilkins on passing downs. But, if the Colts are going to smash the ball between the tackles, which definitely could happen in this game at home, we could see Mack get up to like 70% or so here, which we've already seen a few times this year. And I will note that we've seen a few games where Mack's workload comes down a little bit. But I believe in this Houston game, he got banged up a little bit. So that was 21 touches. And then in this Kansas City win where they did pound the ball between the tackles, he got 32 touches. That was a win. In this win right here, he got 19 touches. This win, he gets 23 touches, 25 touches in the Week 1 loss to Chargers. So we can definitely see him get 25 touches here at 7K against a cake. I mean, the best matchup you can get in terms of a running back. So really, really like Mack if I can get to him this week in the mid-range. I definitely think he's going to be overlooked because his price is up here as well. Now, two interesting running backs that I think will be very, very chalky because McCaffrey, I think, will be very, very chalky, and I think that Lamar Jackson will be very, very chalky, which means that people are going to have to spend down for their other running backs. So there are two options down here I think are going to be very popular. Singletary might get a decent amount of ownership, too. He's not a bad play, but I'm going to talk about two other guys. David Montgomery is the one, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be playing David Montgomery this week. I think this is the final of the week. I'm going to come around on Montgomery. Obviously, I'm a little bit late here. He came through last week with a really great game. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns are what got him there. The reason I didn't play him there was not the greatest of matchups on the road against a pass funnel. But man, I mean, we knew all year. We've known since the beginning of the year, since the very first game of the year, actually, where we played the showdown and we were talking about how good of a play David Montgomery is, that his snap share later in the year would start elevating. And we've seen that. He's played over 70% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks. Keep in mind, Montgomery is a rookie if you don't know that. So that's why we've seen him, start to become a bigger part of this offense, especially with the struggles of Mr. Trubisky. They tend to try to keep the ball on the ground if they can, especially when they get towards the end zone. And that's the thing with Montgomery. Over the next guy we're going to talk about is just that his volume in the red zone is just massive. I mean, no one else is touching the ball in the red zone for the Bears out of the backfield. Tariq Cohen has gotten a few looks, but he got one last week actually. Tariq Cohen did. I think it was like at the 2-yard line. He got massively stuffed with a little bit of a cheeky type of play. But overall, Montgomery's going to be the guy that's going to get pretty much all the touches in the red zone. 2.5 home favorite. Workload's going to be here for Montgomery. I absolutely love the play. And keep in mind, he's also got 9 targets over the last 2 weeks. So that's something you like to see as well. 5.3K, awesome floor. His price didn't come up enough after his 2 straight games, which is not really awesome. That his price is only at 5.3K. It really lets you do a lot with your lineups. So, I mean, yeah, he's going to be someone that's part of my core as well. Let's talk about one more running back as well. Ronald Jones at 4.3K. Definitely more of a risk than Ronald Jones II. Definitely more of a risk than Montgomery at 4.3K. We do see that he had 20 touches last week. We know that Bruce Arians has talked about he has earned the starting role. He talked about, we got to get this guy more snaps, and that's what he said after last week's game. So it seems like this guy is going to continue to see an uptick in snaps. He saw 53% of the snaps last week. He saw a season high, tied for a season high in touches with 20. Including his 18 routes run, which again, overall, Jones is usually not impactful in the passing game. But man, if he's running 18 routes, he can definitely see a few targets here, which is you love to see that. He is going to be in the mix in the red zone. He's not always going to be the guy. Obviously, they could go to a guy like Peyton Barber. He only played 14% of the snaps last week. He seems to be a little bit phased out a little bit. Ogunbowale is the guy who is going to be taking the most snaps from Ronald Jones. He pretty much always stays in on third downs. But still, obviously there's a little bit of risk here with Jones. Like I said, only 53% of the snaps last week, although he does have that coach speak on his side, saying that they want to get him more snaps. And also, of course, there is a chance that they give Barber the snaps in the red zone. But this is still a pace-up game. We still have a very, very good matchup against Arizona, who's giving up 4.4 yards per carry. We have Jones as a home favorite against the Cardinals. This game, again, highest total on the slate. If Barber plays 55 to 60% of the snaps, assuming that you get a small tick up from last week, it's a really, really good spot for Barber here at 4.3K. He's really just a DraftKings play. It's a little bit too expensive on FanDuel, but man, on DraftKings, his savings at 4.3K really makes him enticing here. And I think he will be. I think the higher up in stakes you go, the higher owned Jones is going to be. That's just my guess, though. And especially with people wanting to get exposure to this game, I think that Jones ownership as the week goes on will move up. Which I guess it's Friday, but as the week continues, Sunday morning type stuff. Okay, so I'll be honest with you guys about Michael Thomas. We're going to talk about him right now, move to wide receivers. My first build did not have Michael Thomas in it. I'm going to be honest with you. I know I just said I want to start with these three and build around him. I ended up having to make a small change to my build, and I don't have Michael Thomas. I would like for that to change before Sunday morning, but I'll be honest, and right now I don't have Michael Thomas in my skeleton build, my first build. That does not mean that he is not the best wide receiver play on the slate. He is the best wide receiver play on the slate. Even at his highest price of the season, $8,300, Falcons just create zero pressure. Let's talk about this Saints team total, which is 32.5, 4 points higher than any other team on the slate. That's one thing with Mac too, by the way. They have a 28.25 team total. That is it's pretty sick. Obviously they're playing the Dolphins, but jumping back into Michael Thomas here. Atlanta creates no pressure. They have the 31st ranked passing defense, DVOA defense in the league. The Saints are just going to be able to throw it with ease in this game. They're going to have no problems. Obviously, you can see that reflected in the total. Thomas has gone over 11 targets per game this year and is probably the safest bet that you can possibly get at wide receiver. He's priced to his max, but, this is a guy who's on pace to break the NFL record in receptions in a season right now. So that's just how good of a season this guy's having. I still regret this week not playing him at 6.6K. I mean, how much of a fish do you have to be to not play him at 6.6K? That's just what happens. Now here I am touting him at 8.3K, but man, what a good play. What a good spot. Really, really like Michael Thomas this week. Obviously, I have a lot of interest in these Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers. Mike Evans is going to see shadow coverage from Patrick Peterson, but Peterson has not been good, like I said earlier. When he's come back from injury, he's been burned over the last few weeks. Emmanuel Sanders running all over him. This is just the best paced matchup of the week, and I really want to get exposure to it through one of the wide receivers if I can. Of course, like I said, it's going to come down to these two versus Michael Thomas for me in cash. I mean, Cooper Kupp is there too, and I'll talk about Kupp briefly in a second. But man, Evans, even with Peterson on him, is definitely in play. At only 600 less than Thomas, I really want to be able to get up to the consistency of Thomas. But Evans is not a bad secondary option here behind Thomas. And obviously Godwin, he actually gets the better matchup of the two and is 200 less here. He popped up in the air yards by low model as one of the top 10 receivers this week. And he's coming up against a defense that hasn't been able to defend slot receivers all year long. The Cardinals have given 10 touchdowns to opposing slot receivers. Obviously, Godwin runs the majority of his routes in the slot. I believe like 65% or so in the slot, if not more than that. So, really like both those guys this week. I think my slight preference is Godwin for 200 cheaper, but both of them are very, very good options. And I don't mind them in cash. I don't mind them in GPPs. You can definitely double stack with Evans if you want to in this matchup. Cooper Kupp is someone that we should be talking about because no one is going to play him. I mean, people will play him, but mostly in GPPs because the Bucks, the Bucks receivers are in such a good spot. You have Michael Thomas, of course, who's going to be pretty massive chalk, I assume, at wide receiver. So, Kupp against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who cannot defend the slot to save their lives. They try to defend the slot with the linebacker, and it's not going to work with Cooper Kupp. It's not going to work with any good slot receiver, so he's interested in me. But after that, we really move down. We skip over a lot of these guys. Devontae Adams is cheap, but man, Odell Beckham is really cheap in the GBP. He's interesting, but I keep scrolling down into this 5K range where it gets really interesting. In the bottom of the 5K range where it gets interesting. Christian Kirk is the first guy we're going to talk about here. I think he will be very highly owned because of the volume that we're probably going to see in this game in a pace-up spot. Or not a pace-up spot for them, but the highest total in the slate. Both teams do run at a pretty frequent pace here. Arizona's come down a little bit. They're not running no huddle as much. It could be based on the matchup. Of course, they played San Francisco. They played New Orleans, two tough defenses, and Seattle before that. Could be just based on the matchups we've seen, but They have come down a little bit in pace, but still, the Bucs pass funnel should mean Kirk gets a ton of opportunities. Kirk leads the team in air yards and is versus a bottom 6 pass defense DVOA. Really, the matchup can't get much better than this for Christian Kirk against the Bucs defense that just sucks against the pass. One small tick down for Kirk, and something that I think will be very interesting to watch on Sunday morning, because this is a 1 p.m. Eastern lock, would be Kirk has been playing outside a lot more. Just last week, he was playing outside a lot more in that Thursday night game. And we saw him get only 5 targets, which is definitely concerning. The surprising active on that Thursday game was Damiere Byrd, and apparently that just changed up the entire wide receiver core, because we saw Kirk, who has been running like 70 to 80% of his routes in the slot, move outside. Obviously, that really did not play well. Not only did he have a tough matchup against San Francisco, but he also, Kyler Murray tends to look for his guys in the slot, those quick check down options. So that is a small concern for me. If we see Damiere Byrd again sit out and Kirk is again outside, it's a small tick down. That said, we are still getting a guy who is averaging, like 9 targets a game here. So, the volume here, 5.2K in a great matchup, is still solid, even if Kirk is outside. Pascal, next guy I wanted to mention, could have Brian Hoyer under center here, which definitely is going to help, but he should have a pretty solid matchup against the Dolphins secondary. Led the team in targets, routes, and yards last week. Paris Campbell being out could further condense the target share here if the Colts are forced to air it out at all versus Miami. If they can't lean on Marlon Mack for the entire game, I don't know why they wouldn't be able to, but potentially. And they need to pass. Pascal should be the guy they go to. I don't think Pascal is going to be chalky at all, but if he ends up being chalky, I do have a little bit of interest in pivoting down to Chester Rogers in GPPs, who gets a really, really nice matchup, and he's very cheap against he plays a slot against the Dolphins, terrible slot coverage. Another pivot in this 5K range that gives you an extra $200 off of Kirk is Jamison Crowder, who he did have two relatively tough matchups and only got 5 targets in those 2 games. This Jacksonville game was just disgusting to watch. But he has a clear connection with Darnold. We've seen him in general be far more productive with Darnold. The Giants have a terrible, terrible secondary. And this is another game where I think this could be a little bit of a sneaky pace-up spot. And despite these 2 games, these 2 offenses being terrible, they've got 2 bad defenses, and they've got offenses that can tend to move the ball pace a little bit. This game could actually play out a lot of different ways, but Crowder makes sense in pretty much all of those. So at 5K, he's definitely in play, and I think he's pretty safe. Landry isn't bad as well. Again, he only got priced up a little bit. But the last guy, or actually, there's 2 more guys. You know what? I'm going to skip over. Devontae Parker is another guy. I'm not going to really talk about him, but I'll talk about him. Preston Williams is out. He was averaging 7 targets a game. In those there are 6 targets a game over those 4 games with Fitzpatrick before. So those targets are going to open up. I would expect Parker, who is a pretty solid air yards producer, to get in on that, get on those targets a little bit. It is a tough matchup in terms of the Colts zone defense. But he should be elevated to a true wide receiver 1 status, going to play all the snaps. In a game where Miami should have to pass a decent amount. Okay, that should be enough about him. The guy I'm really interested in down here, and I think as the week is going on, everywhere I look is touting A.J. Brown. So I think he's going to end up being very chalky because, like I said, people want to be able to pay up for those 3, McCaffrey, Thomas, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, this is a cash game video, so I felt like I had to put those guys in here real quick. A.J. Brown, man, I think he should be probably part of your cash game core as he continues to come in very, very chalky. Gets a nice matchup against Kansas City secondary here, but most importantly, as you can see right here in Corey Davis, he is doubtful. To start the season, similar to David Montgomery, to start the season, he was playing 50% of the snaps or less. He was rotating in. The Tennessee receivers were rotating. Pretty much Davis was the only guy he was still rotating, but he was playing pretty much 80% of the snaps for the most part. And then last week we see, I believe Davis actually popped up. What happened? Did he get injured in the game? I think he may have. I'm not sure what happened here. I'm not sure if he played the whole game, but regardless, we saw that A.J. Brown played 69% of the snaps last week. That was a season high. Corey Davis is doubtful, not going to play most likely here, which opens up about 5 targets per game. That should also mean a higher snap rate for Brown as well as Adam Humphries. But Adam Humphries is actually a cheap guy that, again, could, if you want to go down and a little bit more risk, Adam Humphries, he's been terrible this year, but man, These Titan receivers are going to have to play more snaps. I think both Humphries and Brown are going to be over 70% this week in a game where the Titans are probably, assuming Mahomes is back and should move the Chiefs a little bit faster with Mahomes there instead of Matt Moore, should open up a little bit more of opportunities for these receivers to have to play a little bit of catch up. They do have Ryan Tannehill, quarterback. That's obviously a little bit of a bump down, but it's a really good spot against a weak Chiefs secondary if Tannehill can just manage the game and get the ball into the hand of his playmakers. I wanted to shout out Evan Silva for a nice note about Brown. It was he is averaging the most yards per route run among rookies, only behind Marquise Brown. So it's a guy who looks really, really dynamic and should. I don't think we're going to see him priced down here at 4.3K for long if Corey Davis stays out. That will do it for the wide receivers. And I'm actually only going to talk about one tight end this week because I am so sold on Mike Gesicki that I think he's just such a smash play this week. I don't know. From what I've seen, he looks like he's going to be the second or third chalkiest tight end. Looks like a lot of people might go Rhett Ellison. So, he should benefit from no Preston Williams as well. But honestly, even if Rhett Ellison was in, I would have interest in Gesicki because, he's just a very, very good athlete. Came out. He's top 95 percentile out of Penn State in speed score, agility score, 40-yard dash time of 4.54. Was early second round pick this year. Dude who's going to continue to be heavily involved in this offense. And, like I said, should benefit again from Preston Williams being out. He is third in tight end air yards since Fitzpatrick has come in and started to air it out a bit. Since what is that since week 6 then? Week 6 or week 7. Just really like Gesicki with Fitzpatrick here. And as we've seen, he's been getting solid targets. This 3 versus Pittsburgh isn't great to see, but in general, man, I think that you're getting a really, really nice dynamic player here. Versus Indianapolis for very, very cheap. 2 other guys, Jonnu Smith, again, we mentioned the injuries for Tennessee. He could see more targets. Delaney Walker is still out. And we also have down here who is coming in as a chalkiest tight end. We have a guy, do I have to search his name or am I going to find him? Rhett Ellison at 2,500. Rhett Ellison, not really traditionally a very strong receiving tight end. However, he has 2 games with over 5 targets this year, and he is 2,500. Evan Ingram is going to be out with a foot injury. So Rhett Ellison is the other guy that I'll be considering at tight end if I don't want to use that 600 for somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? So if I need that 600, I'll go down to Ellison. Is what I'm trying to say. Excuse me. And he's not a guy who traditionally gets much involvement in the passing game, but he has done a little bit of it. We saw the touchdown. This was actually a game that Evan Ingram was in. We saw a touchdown against the Flowchart Arizona Cardinals. So yeah, I mean that's interesting. Obviously, we can talk about Flowchart. You can talk about Cameron Brate, but he's all the way priced up at 3,700. And didn't get a target last week. So, they just decided to price up the Tampa Bay tight end because they're playing the Cardinals. That's kind of funny. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up for the top plays portion of the video. Let's go ahead and talk about the favorite game stacks of the week. And the first one, obviously, is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Arizona Cardinals. Let's go ahead and plop in Kyler Murray. So yeah, I'm just gonna go through some of my favorite stacks and how I think you could stack them up potentially. One way you could do this, let's go ahead and run something like, and let's go with a little bit lower owned Fitzgerald. But actually, I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna go here, then I'm going to go Godwin, and I'm gonna go Ronald Jones. Something like that makes sense. We know that Ronald Jones isn't super involved. So one reason I don't like this because you probably have a little bit of negative correlation here because Jones doesn't catch a lot of passes, so it's unlikely he's going to catch one through the air. So instead, he's going to be taking points away from Winston. So instead, you could do something like this, or even something like if you want a full game stack it, if you have a lot of confidence in this game, that is a little bit interesting as well. And that should give you salary to get some decent players outside of that as well with Ronald Jones and those 2 cheap receivers in the lineup. Yeah, that's one spot. Obviously, another spot that I like is going. And then obviously you can double stack Winston up as well. Honestly, I don't mind running it back with like David Johnson, who should be very low owned, and Chase Edmonds still out. So at worst, he's going to be splitting carries with Kenyon Drake. And David Johnson, we've seen him line up as a wide receiver multiple times this year, or many of the times this year. So that's a little bit interesting as well. David Johnson in those stacks, he is under 6K this week, so he is very cheap. So, what were my other game stacks? I had one other one. I'm gonna just go to Vegas real quick that I wanted to. Okay, yeah, let's try this Dolphins one real quick because, so I mentioned I like Marlon Mack. We'll plug him in, and then we have Fitzpatrick, who's probably a little bit too expensive this week. He was $4,800 last week and paid off that price tag. But, you could do something like, did they price up Hoyer? I'm just going to make sure. Okay, yeah. She was like super cheap. I was actually kind of interested in that. It's kind of would be funny. But, and then you could go Mac. You could go with, like I said before, you could go with Parker. And then, you could go with McCaffrey. He's a pretty good play. And then go with like a Rodgers, Chester Rogers, or like I said, a Zach Pascal. That makes a little bit of sense as well. Get up with Pascal, run it with Mac, and then run it back with Parker. Obviously, the Dolphins don't have a very high team total, so how did I not put the man Mike Gesicki in there? Mike Gesicki, of course, he falls into that as well. The run back options. If you want to, honestly, let's get a little bit crazy. Let's get a little bit crazy, and let's do this. No, you know what? We're going to save a little bit of money. We're going to go down to Chester Rogers. We're going to double stack. We are going to double stack Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm not going to be playing this in my 3-entry max. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. But that is something, it's something. So that's something. I do, like I said, I think this Giants-Jets game could be a little bit paced up, and I do like Barkley, so we plug him in. I'm not sure I'm going to look to this. I'll probably just instead play like a naked Lamar in a stack like this instead of just playing one of the quarterbacks. I guess it'd be Darnold. I don't really know. I don't like either one of those guys too much. I'd rather just go quarterback elsewhere. So let's go ahead and look at some of these receivers where I said I like Jamison Crowder. The Jets are missing pretty much all of their starters on defense just about. So you could play a lot of different guys here. But I would probably say Golden Tate would be the guy I'd want playing the slot. Obviously, you can also just play Rhett, but there is a little bit of a negative correlation in GPPs playing the starting tight end and tight end 1, running back 1. There's a little bit of negative correlation there. So instead, we could go with like something like this. We would play Daniel Jones. You play. Let's actually just stick with this. Let's go with that. And then if Bell plays, which I expect him to, that as well. It makes a little bit of sense there. With Rhett Ellison, you have a lot of flexibility in your lineup. And lastly, obviously, Calvin Ridley is very cheap on FanDuel, by the way. If you guys are still watching, that's a great play. I don't think I need to tell you that. Let's go with Drew Brees. Double stack it with... Latavius Murray is 7,300. And then let's run it back with Calvin Ridley. No, let's run it back with Russell Gage, who got 9 targets last week and looks to be the replacement for Sanu in this offense in a game where they're going to have to pass a lot. And these Atlanta-New Orleans games, even though Atlanta has looked terrible this year, man, they do tend to be shootouts. So I'm hoping that Atlanta can keep it close because that would actually elevate the upside of Alvin Kamara for sure. But yeah, I think that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. That's pretty much all of the game stacks that are in. There's actually not a lot of great game stacks this week. You could look at a Packers game stack potentially, maybe even this Tennessee game with those cheap receivers, but not a lot of game stack situations this week. That's why I think that Cardinals game could potentially be a little bit overowned in GPPs, but rightfully so. It should be the best game to stack this week. There's lots of different ways to stack it as well with Ronald Jones, with David Johnson, with all those different receivers. Lots of different ways to go about it. So that's going to pretty much wrap it up. Don't forget, if you guys made it all the way to the end, please follow me on Twitter, @ByHardy. Please check us out, lockcfs.com. You guys know where to find us. And with that said, I'm going to be heading out. See you guys next week for my cash breakdown for Week 11. And good luck this week. Hope you guys win some solid money. Hope you guys play Christian McCaffrey. And best of luck. See you guys next week. Peace.